You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hi, I'm Ness, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Rife. And you are listening to Season 6 of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast. The podcast in which Ryan is the expert in Warhammer 40k, and I, sadly, am still the noob trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. But yeah, you want to dive just straight into it right
Yeah,
now?
we're just going right for it.
I think we do.
All right. So, bit of a summary for last time, because, you know, Peel might have missed a bit of time. You know, we never know.
Last episode of Dragon Balls. No, okay.
So, last time we left off on Prospero with Ahriman, kicking off his ritual to get them back to the planet of the sorcerers so they can redo the rubric. Of course, life could not be easy for Ahriman for even 5 seconds, so as the ritual's kicking off, the dead of the planet seem to bring a big monster to life to, fuck up his day. At the same time, Inquisition rocks up into orbit over the planet, ready to bomb the shit out of them. Astraeos is, en route with a small army, just to fuck up his day as well. And we also have the Changeling, which is the Zinch demon anyway, the shapeshifter, which is gradually mimicking its way through people to get closer and closer to Ahriman, which at this point I believe it's currently in the guise of a space marine leader who is part of the Inquisition fleet. So it's getting closer and closer, So enemies are converging around him at the moment. But yeah. I want to make clear, we're not at the point that like everything kind of coalesces into one big moment yet. That's coming up later. So just to get straight into it, Inquisition fleet appears, bombs the shit out of the planet. Right? They're like, we're not even going to try and fight this fucker. We're just going to nuke the planet into nothingness from orbit. Right? That's the gimmick. Right? It's already a shithole blown up planet since what the Space Wolves did to it like 10,000 years ago. So the Inquisition's just going to bomb the shit out of it again and just end everyone's day there. As the bombs start to fall and shit starts to get really fucked up, Ahriman uses kind of the last of his spare power to stop time for a moment, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to do, I suppose. And this is just so that he can like finish off the ritual. Once time is frozen, a big old demon with a weirdly large number of wings appears. It specifically states that it has far too many wings, but I don't think it specifies how many wings. I'm assuming 9, which is a weird number of wings to have. Just saying. But, whatever. And the demon, it kind of just, like, tells Ahriman that, like, it's his nemesis, and it's been manipulating him all along, and all the shit you usually say to someone when you're trying to fuck with them in this kind of setting, right? It does the whole Bond villain monologue where it just tries to rip the piss out of him, make him feel bad and stuff like that. This is the demon that is currently possessing Astraeos, right? It's like projected itself here to mess with Ahriman while he's doing this ritual. Because you gotta remember, Astraeos' whole thing is that he wants to, like, get revenge against Ahriman, right?
Hey.
Because all the bad shit that happened to Astraeos is Ahriman's fault. Being interrogated by the Inquisition and having to be possessed and all that. It is 100% Ahriman's fault, So, yeah. So, the demon turns into Astraeos, briefly. Because it is actually the same guy. The demon's just possessing Astraeos. So it just changes its shape in front of Ahriman in Astraeos. So that they can talk, like, one-on-one. And Ahriman knows who he's actually talking to. And Astraeos basically just explains, yeah, I'm gonna fuck up everything you try to do because you didn't save me or my brothers like you promised you would, you asshole. So Ahriman's now well aware that, one, the demon that he had locked up on his ship before has been fucking with him the entire time, and also Astraeos is still alive. So 2 big revelations there. But anyway... Again, Ahriman does absolutely nothing about this terrible thing happening in front of him and moves on with his life as usual. King of Denial, I'm telling you. Finishes his ritual with his weird scarab medallion And we get this fun little moment where, like, the Inquisition bomb the shit out of the planet, and then they go down to the planet, and there's no sign of anybody. And they're like, pretty sure we hit them. Where the fuck are they? There should be some corpses around here and stuff like that. And it's because, obviously, they managed to finish the ritual, so they're now all on the planet of the Sorcerers, rather than on Prospero. They all just got teleported before the bombs hit them. So, fuck the Inquisition, I guess.
Gave you.
Before we run on with Ahriman here, right? Because he's now like falling through the warp towards the planet of the Sorcerers, right? There's a few weird things go on around this point, and I feel like maybe it's more relevant to go through them first before we continue the main story bit with Ahriman, right? So people keep meeting Magnus, right? People keep meeting Magnus the Red. Different people, totally different locations, different versions of Magnus. But for some reason, he keeps popping up all over the fucking place for a little bit here, right? So, for example, Kaneku, the sorcerer that the evil Magnus that's been around this whole time, has put in charge of the defenses for when Ahriman turns up. He is looking for Magnus, because Magnus just kind of disappeared at the start of this after telling Kaneku he was in charge. He just gone, right? So he's been looking for him, and eventually he finds him in this big weird like labyrinth thing, but it's like a weird version of Magnus. He gets to the middle of the labyrinth and he finds like a cave, and inside it is just this dude with like a wrecked red robe sitting by a campfire, and this dude's like, well, like, I'm Magnus, I'm your dad. And Kaneku's like, no, you're fucking not. You're some creepy old man in a cave. And the creepy old man in the cave is like, well, I am Magnus, and that really depends how you look at it. On the other hand, we have Iobel, the Inquisitor who's in Ahriman's mind, who is just walking around in Ahriman's subconscious, who also ends up in a weird cave. But inside, she finds this, like, big angelic figure covered in, like, gold, or in like, this weird golden armor with symbols all over it, and he has, like, big wings and horns and shit. And this, obviously, as soon as he goes, I'm Magnus, Iobel's like, fucking right you are. Look at you. Of course you're fucking Magnus. Who else would you be? She has no issue believing that he's Magnus. But this one's just like, no, nothing's ever as it seems. And I guess thirdly, the Athenaeum of Callimachus, which is now in the body of one of Ahriman's dead brothers, also kind of freaks out for a moment and starts walking around calling people its son. You gotta remember, it is part of Magnus, you know? So,
Yeah,
which is really weird, but like, it just suddenly becomes aware of that, basically, and starts going around being like, relax, my son, everything will be fine, to like, everyone. And they're all like, alright, Nibba. So, like, it's really weird that everyone just suddenly starts meeting Magnus all over the fucking place. There is a reason for this, and I was gonna come back to this explanation later, but it probably makes more sense to just explain all the weird Magnuses now, and then continue on, rather than going back and forward too much. So, this is going to be a weird explanation, by the way, because how the fuck could it be a normal one, right? But bear with me here, right? So, right, we're going to give each one of the Magnuses a slightly different name, just to separate them a bit. A name or title or something, right? Because it's going to be really confusing if we're just saying Magnus over and over, right? So, the one that looks like an angel, which is talking to the Inquisitor Iobel, we'll just call Magnus, right? The one that's in the labyrinth talking to Kaneku, which is the creepy old man in the red robes, we will call him the Crimson King.
okay.
The Athenaeum will just be called the Athenaeum. And the evil demon prince version of Magnus that's been walking around for the last 10,000 years blowing shit up will be Magnus the Red. Very slight differentiations, but yeah. So, you know that card trick where you get 3 cards and 2 of them are black and one's red, or vice versa, and you flip them all around and make someone guess which one's the one, like the odd one out?
Okay.
something like that goes on here, right? With these group of Magnuses, whatever, with a group of Magnuses, right? So what has happened here, right? And I'm going to tell you the whole story, and then I'm going to explain the issue with the whole story at the end of this, right? So, obviously, Ahriman wanted the Athenaeum to get information that he had back when he was planning the first rubric, right? Because Athenaeum is like a link to Magnus's mind, so he can get all that information back. Right? So, all the information he has about the rubric now comes from the Athenaeum. The Crimson King, so the one in the cave, or the old creepy man in the cave with Kaneko, he wanted to change what the rubric would do, right? So he messed with the Athenaeum so that Ahriman would get false information, thinking it was the correct information, right? So he changes the second rubric so that it will not resurrect the Legion, but what it would do is put all these different versions of Magnus back together, but with him in control. So the Legion would be exactly the same, but now there would be one, like, solidified version of Magnus running all of it, who would be significantly more powerful and controlled by this one version of Magnus. The evil Magnus the Red found out about this and went, I'm gonna get involved here. So he interferes with Athenaeum after the first one did, and he changes it again. So the information is going to be different now. He makes a mistake when he's doing it, though, because it turns out the evil Magnus is not actually very good at being, like, Sorcerer King. So now, with the mistake he made, the rubric, it will actually work. It will save the Legion the way Ahriman wants it to, but rather than fixing any parts of Magnus or that, it'll destroy all of the parts of Magnus. Magnus will just cease to exist. But the Legion will be fixed as Ahriman wanted. Right, as it stands, that's what's going to happen, right? That is the rubric Ahriman is about to cast. That is the information he acquired, right? This story is told to Kaneko and Iobel by the individual versions of Magnus they are with, right? They each get half of the story. Neither one of them knows the actual truth of what is going on, right? So at the moment, right, Kaneko thinks that if the ritual is complete, his Magnus that he's just met will now be in control of all the Magnuses. Iobel, on the other hand, knows that the spell was then interfered with again, and it will now resurrect the Thousand Sons, but destroy Magnus. Iobel is obviously an Inquisitor. She doesn't want there to be, 100,000 Chaos Sorcerers running around, as opposed to the typical 1,000 of them that there are at the moment, which are bad enough. So both of them think something terrible is going to happen if things are allowed to continue as is, and they both need to stop it. But neither of them know the whole story, because everyone's been switching around what's going on. So they both kind of set in their minds that they're going to put a stop to all of this. I don't know how Iobel planned to do that. She is a memory in someone's mind. Whatever. Kaneko was really the only one that had any chance of doing anything here, and he has no idea what's going on. So yeah, that's the gist of all of that. Oh god. Anywho, we're gonna move on and go back to like Ahriman and his boys, right? So as they're like falling through the warp towards the planet of the sorcerers to kick off, the final part of their plan, I'll mention the changeling ends up in kind of a tight spot. Because, again, it's a shapeshifter, but there seems to be a limit to its ability. It's not like Mystique from X-Men, where it can just, like, anyone it looks at, it can just turn into, right? Or whatever, and I can think of. It seems to be, like, limited in some way or another. There's only a certain number of people it can turn into. I don't know if it has to, like, imprint on them in some way, like spend enough time near them or get like some kind of DNA sample or something. I don't know what the deal is, but there seems to be a limit to it, because whenever it changes away from someone to turn into the next person, take it closer to Ahriman, it can't go back anymore. Right? It can't go back to the last person anymore for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know if it like I don't know if maybe in doing so, like in changing to a new person, maybe there's only like a limited memory of people it can turn into at any one time it can have, or something like that. I don't know what the deal is. They never really explain it. But it seems as if he can't go back people. He can only go forward into new ones. But there's also a limit to that. So he ends up in like a battle with a bunch of space marines and stuff, and he gets kind of injured. He does manage to win the fight. But in doing so, he ends up with like only one more person he can turn into, which is not great. He's kind of like ran himself ragged at this point. So there's only one person he can turn into now, and it's Ignis. I don't know why it's Ignis, but he can turn into Ignis. It's the last face he has the ability to wear, is Aaron's right-hand man. Obviously, he's not with Ahriman yet, so that doesn't really help him at the moment, but that might come up later. That's an issue for later on. So, Ahriman and his boys appear on the planet as sorcerers, Magnus's homeworld kind of thing. And they appear in the centre of this thing called the City of Towers. Obviously, wizards have to have a tower, because otherwise it wouldn't be, weird wizardy shit. So, City of Towers for all the wizards. Their appearance kind of destroys a bunch of shit, because when they, like, appear out of the warp, there's, like, a big shockwave that, like, wrecks the city a little bit, and fucks a bunch of people off. And obviously, hell of an entrance, but it does get everyone's attention, so war breaks out very quickly. As you can imagine, it's immediate, like, hell breaks loose, warfare immediately kicks off. You've got Rubric fighting Rubric, you've got sorcerers fighting sorcerers, you've got demons fighting demons, right? It's just full-on, all-out war all of a sudden in the centre of this fucking city. And funnily enough, Ahriman just gets Catesius, the sorcerer who's like a demon summoner, to summon bigger, better demons to fight their demons. Like, yeah, we might be like in Tzeentch's domain now, but fuck him. Bring out some fucking like bloodthirsters and shit. Let's get the big like the Balrog in here to fuck up their day. So that's the gist of that. There is a really fun little bit here where Catesius runs into a demon titan that he like helped create back in the day, like when they were still, one whole legion. The name is almost unpronounceable, like the name of this titan. It's Xether Tior.
What?
It's something. It's almost unpronounceable, right? I don't know how the fuck you say it, but it's a really weird name, right, for this big demon titan. But yeah, back in the day when it was going from being a normal warlord titan to a demon titan, they bound a bunch of demons to the machine itself to make it more powerful and demon controlled, I guess. I don't know what the point is. Demons are basically batteries for these things. But Catesius was the one that bound the demons into this thing, so he meets it on the battlefield. Catesius, the one little sorcerer, standing against this 100-foot tall demon titan, and he's like, nostalgia. I remember when I helped make you. It's not really an important part of the story, but Catesius does end up fighting this titan, and obviously he personally can't do a hell of a lot to it. He's a sorcerer, so he can do something, but he's gonna have a hard time against a titan, because a titan's fucking gigantic, right? So obviously, being that he's a summoner, he just summons something to fight it for him. Or with him, I guess. He ends up summoning a dude called Doombreed. Technically, he's Doombreed the Skull Lord. He's one of Khorne's demon princes. Which is an incredibly powerful ancient demon that had basically just been forgotten because he's that old. But yeah, he just summons a demon of Khorne to fuck this thing's day up. Which honestly might seem like an unfair fight because it's a 107-foot tall demon warlord titan possessed by 9 other demons. But I mean, I'll show you Doombreed. Like Doombreed's a pretty scary looking dude. Uh,
Yeah, it is.
yeah. So again, it's not really an important part of the storyline. I just found this really funny that they just had like Caduceus battling a warlord titan he helped build at the side of the whole thing. For the record, Doombreed beheads the titan and then offers its skull to Khorne. Yeah, so, just so you know. But for the sake of main storyline stuff, this does mean Caduceus is kind of sidelined, right? Because Ahriman and the main group of his dudes are all doing, like, casting the Rubric ritual in a big ritual circle with Ahriman at the centre and all that kind of stuff. And you need everyone involved for a ritual that powerful. But Caduceus is away over at the sidelines battling a demon titan with this guy because, well, a demon titan could also fuck up the ritual, So, yeah, just so you know, Caduceus is like sidelined for the bulk of this. So, obviously, the main group starts trying to run the ritual while typical war stuff goes on around them. Luckily, they've got a shitload of the Rubric to act as, like, robot sentries and keep enemies at bay. And they also have a shitload of demons with them because, well, it's just what you do when you're a chaos guy. And at the centre of all this, obviously, Ahriman's at the centre of this big ritual circle that's kicking off. And as the kind of ritual's going on and it's starting to like kick off properly, his mind like ascends into the warp as the power of the ritual kind of joins into him, and he's linked to all his brothers again through this ritual like he was the first time he cast it, and he's basically granted nigh on godly powers. That the Rubric is one of these rituals which is like, it's like ancient, long-forgotten, mythical magic, right? You know how everything that's got magic has, like, ancient evil kinds or ancient, like, godly kinds or whatever, like, in the background of it, right? It's like that. It's like the oldest fucking kind of magic there is. It is, like, the power to change reality in itself. This primordial magics kind of stuff, right? You can change the laws of physics with this shit. You can change reality with this stuff, whatever you want, really, because you are essentially a god while you're using it. It's kind of nigh on unsurmountable, the level of power this fucking spell actually possesses. But the problem is it has a price, and the first time it basically took the Legion as a price. But that's a separate issue. So, would you like a very dramatic quote from the book about, like, this moment where he's, like, casting the ritual?
Okay, go on.
Yeah. Okay, so the Rubric spread, its halo rising bright beneath the iron shadows of the warships. It had been a creation not of years, not of centuries, nor millennia, but of an existence. He had been casting this spell all his life, and now he was living its endpoint, its summation. Rubric, a word which in ancient lore meant notation of instruction, an imperative, a command. Renew, he spoke in silence, and reality heard and obeyed. Very dramatic.
There's you like a little bit of the narrator voice, the dramatic voice, but it was...
I could really work on my voice acting. I could do that, yeah. But yeah, it's very dramatic. But yeah, so this is what he commands. He uses the spell to renew, so basically bring the Legion back. Start over, kind of thing. Now, a ritual like this, right, even after you tell it what you want it to do, there's still a little bit of, casting time, right? Because now you've gave that power direction, but it takes time for it to actually do the thing. So, just because he's gave it its final command, it's not like, boom, it's instantly done, right? It's like, until this point, it's been like a generator starting up. Now it's got full power, you need to make it do something. But it doesn't mean that, like, the whole system just works perfectly right away. It takes a little bit. So, it has to, like, keep the ritual running a little bit longer for it to, like, take its final action, kind of thing. So, reality obeys his command, and things start to go into motion. This is the moment where everything comes together, right? So, to finish the last of the ritual, every single Thousand Sons Marine is needed, right? Or, as Ahriman had planned it, because he had planned it for the guys he had, obviously, right? He wasn't going to plan it to need more people than he had access to. So, he needs Catesius back. So, because he's linked to all his brothers through the spell, he calls to Catesius. So, Catesius starts hearing him calling to him. So, Catesius leaves Doombreed here to fight the Demon Titan and starts heading back towards the Ritual Circle. As this is all going on, this moment seems to draw everyone together, right? It probably is because there is like a big roaring pillar of magic energy flying into the sky around Ahriman. But one way or another, it seems to draw everyone into towards him at this one final moment kind of thing. Because you also have Kineku heading this way. He's a bit injured. He's been in battle this whole time so far. He just kind of fixes himself quickly with a bit of magic and then starts heading in as well. And Astrios is en route in his Space Hulk. So, yeah. Also, the Changeling is around, just so you know. The Changeling was he was flying around in a gunship doing Inquisition things, trying to find his moment, but the gunship gets shot down. And he basically just gets up out of the wreckage of the crash, dusts itself off, and starts walking towards Ahriman. So, everyone is, enclosing on him now. And this, final moment really... this is the final moment, really, because you might remember Ahriman has shards of a silver bullet lodged in him from when Iabel shot him when they first met. And a bunch of shards of it weren't removable by surgery because they were too close to his heart. So he just uses a little bit of his power all the time to hold them in place so they don't, dig into his heart and kill him. Hearts, I should say, as two. The thing is that to cast the rubric, he needs all of his power, not part of his power. So he needs to give up the part that's holding the silver in place so that he can finish the ritual. So he needs to choose between giving up on his goal or dying. Yeah.
Easy choice.
Easy choice, yeah. He chooses death. And the silver bites into his heart and they stop beating very quickly. Couldn't be that easy. Big twist. Everyone fucking arrives at the exact same time to fuck up his day. And the big flash reveal is Astrios' ship bursts out of the warp about 3 feet away from the planet and just decimates the whole fucking place. Just crashes a spaceship clean into the planet. Fuck you, Ahriman. And then suddenly Astrios' whole army bursts out of the wreckage of their ship and just starts attacking everybody. So now you've got 3 little armies fighting each other on this planet. Astrios obviously goes straight for Ahriman. He's like, I'm fucking breaking this guy's kneecaps. I'm having him. So, Astrios gets to him, and you might imagine that this is quite a delicate ritual, the whole rubric thing. You know, it's quite in-depth. There's a lot going on. And a ship being crashed into the planet kind of throws it off a little bit. So Ahriman is left, desperately trying to hold the ritual together, right? Fighting to keep it as it was and not let it, be disrupted properly. So when Astrios gets to him, Ahriman can't defend himself. You know, he has to be keeping the ritual together. So Ahriman's, left with Astrios just, ready to murder him. And before he can murder him, Kineku appears out of nowhere and stabs Astrios with his spear. So, saves Ahriman at the last minute there by accident. And he kind of has this moment, Kineku, where he's like, I can't really do anything here. I'm gonna die. Because, Kineku's been fighting this whole time on this planet since Ahriman appeared, right? And he was pretty heavily injured. He just healed himself to come and get Ahriman. But he's still exhausted and things like that. He's not really got it in him to fight the demon that's inside Astrios, or Astrios to that point, right?
Yeah.
So, he knows he can't really do much and has this moment where he's kind of despondent, and then he's like, no, fuck this, I'm the son of Magnus. I can do I can fucking handle this shit. So what he does is he just like rather than trying to defend himself from Astrios, he just turns around and like lunges his spear towards Ahriman. But it's not to stab Ahriman, it's to put himself into the ritual circle. Right? Think of it like electrical current. If you put something metal into it, it becomes part of the circuit. You know? Yeah. He kind of does that to himself. He puts himself into the ritual, but in doing so, he like steals Ahriman's place at the center of it, and Ahriman just kind of falls away as he like rises to this godly power at the center of the circle. Because he realizes that he doesn't really have it in him to fight anymore, but he does still have control of his powers, and if he can maintain control long enough, he can he can use the rubric for whatever he wants instead of what Ahriman wants. You know? So he can stop Ahriman from getting his goal one way or another. So now that Kaneko is like at the center of this ritual, he realizes that he is like the price the rubric will cost, right? Because a ritual that's powerful, it costs something. You don't get it for free, right? There's no power in the galaxy that can cast a spell like this for free. It always costs something, and now it's Kaneko is the price. So he knows he's going to die to finish the ritual, and all he really has to do now is choose what his life is worth. What does he want out of the ritual? What is he going to sell his life and soul for? Right? And as he's kind of rising to this power, Ahriman is like telling him, like, look, you have to break this cycle, break this fate I put our legion into. They're your brothers too. And the thing is, it's not Ahriman's choice anymore. So Kaneko just ignores him. And the ritual ends. And there's like a big massive shockwave fallout from it that basically kills most of the people on the planet and fucks everything else up. Just decimates the whole place. Yeah. So the city of towers is gone. Right? It's the city of first floors of towers now. Obviously, no one knows what Kaneko did with the ritual. And he's dead now, I think. So nah, probably never going to find out. So everyone kind of has to just wait and see what he did with it. So in the kind of aftermath of this, right, we're kind of getting into some epilogue stuff here. In the aftermath of the rubric being cast for the second time, Caduceus is still making his way towards Ahriman, right? The ritual's over, but he's still heading in, even though he got pretty messed up by the shockwave from it. Luckily, he was a bit further away than everyone else, so he's in better condition than most people. But he's making his way towards where it was all going off. And for some reason, he doesn't know why, he finds himself, like, pulling parts of a demon's name together in his mind and reciting it. So he's summoning a demon, but he can't stop himself, and he doesn't know why, as he, like, walks towards Ahriman. But it's a really long name, and usually the longer the name and the deeper it is buried in his mind and stuff like that, the more powerful and ancient the demon really is, right? Because you don't want to accidentally summon it or have anyone get that information from you if it's something crazy powerful. And he finishes saying the demon's name as he's still walking towards Ahriman, and the demon is summoned. And before him stands the Crimson King himself. Dude has just accidentally summoned Magnus the Red onto this planet.
Yes.
Which is not great. It's not a great thing to do at this point in time, you know? But yeah, no, Magnus is just standing over him all of a sudden. He's like, fuck. That can't be good. But luckily Magnus just ignores Caduceus and just, like, walks into the centre of it all. There is, like, a random demon that attacks him, and he just, like, gone. Just poofs it out of existence. And also Astrios attacks Magnus when he appears. Or more so the demon inside Astrios controls him to attack him. Magnus basically just picks him up by the scruff of the neck, rips the demon out of him, casts it back into the warp, and then tosses Astrios to the side. Just lets him live purely out of the fact that he feels bad for him. It's like, I pity you. So you're not even worth killing. So that's fun. Also, Ahriman wakes up. He didn't actually die somehow, so he's very surprised to be alive after all of this. But he kind of just wakes up in the wreckage, and Ignis appears. You know, right-hand man, good guy to have turn up. Ignis wasn't even in the battle. He was still in one of the ships in orbit, you know, leading from space. Fighting the Inquisition, all that kind of shit. He was doing that kind of stuff. But Ignis turns up as they're talking to him, and they basically just talk about, like, the Ahriman's disappointment at the failure of the ritual, basically. And surprise, surprise, it's not actually Ignis, it's the Changeling, who is planning on killing Ahriman right here and now while he's at his lowest, but a voice, like, in its head tells it not to bother, just leave him be for now, he's still got, like, work to do. So one of the bigger Tzeentch demons has suddenly stepped in and been like, no, leave him be. Things have changed. This guy's got shit to do for us still. So the Changeling just kind of like walks away from Ahriman, and Ahriman forgets this conversation ever occurred. Very strange. So Ahriman has no idea the Changeling was ever involved, but it also did basically nothing in this entire storyline. It was a really disappointing character. It could have done so much. It did nothing. So Ahriman's kind of just left lying in the rubble again, you know, because he doesn't remember talking to Ignis anymore or anything like that. So he's just lying there like, the fuck's going on? And then Caduceus finds him and helps him up and kind of like helps carry him out of the wreckage and stuff. And the two of them go looking for some of the Rubric because they need to know what Kaneku did with the ritual. And he might have fixed the Rubric. You know, he might have brought their brothers back to life, rather than having them be automatons. Because they don't know, right? He might have actually did what Ahriman asked, or what Ahriman initially intended. They don't find them. What they do find is Astrios lying, no longer possessed, dumped in a heap, after Magnus threw him aside like a empty trash bag or whatever, I don't know, like an empty tracksuit. Astrios is generally just a dick to Ahriman, as you would expect. Tells him that he will get his revenge, you know, typical villain before they run away kind of stuff. And before he leaves, he summons a bunch of the Rubric from the rubble around them. He calls out to them and raises them. So the Rubric Marines are still Rubric Marines. They're still automatons. They haven't changed at all. So Ahriman is suddenly very, very disappointed, because now he knows for a fact that Kaneku didn't use the ritual for what he hoped he would. So, after all of this, Ahriman has failed in casting the second Rubric, and for the second time has failed in saving his legion. And everyone slowly just leaves the planet after this. No one really has, like, the forces to fight each other anymore. So Astrios and the you know, his stragglers that are still alive just kind of sawed off. And Ahriman and his cabal all just pile into their ships and fuck off as well. Because no one really has the troops to fight each other. Magnus obviously could have personally went around and murdered everyone, but, like, he doesn't really care that much, you know? So all in all, they kind of just let them leave without a fight. And everyone just kind of goes off really disappointed with everything that's happened. Because no one really got what they wanted out of this, you know? After all of it, Ahriman kind of just goes into seclusion. He goes and just kind of sits in silence on his own somewhere in their ship. And is just really depressed about trying to figure out what to do, or if there is anything to do. Like, you know, is there a next step to this? Because, what, is he just going to try and do it a third time? Same shit will happen again, you know what I mean? So what's the point? So he's very despondent. And this is kind of how he stays until Ignis, Caduceus, and one other guy called Gomata comes to him and is like, we need to show you something. So they lead him to one of their holding decks on the ship, which is where they keep all the Rubric whenever they're, not in war. For transport, they just put them in a holding deck. And they kind of, stand them in ranks, like the terracotta army.
Hey.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. So, a big rows and rows and rows of, warrior statues, basically, right? Perfectly normal. It's a fairly reasonable way to hold these guys. But when they get there, their attention is drawn to the fact that almost a ring has formed in the center of the group of Rubricae around one Rubric Marine who, for some reason, is chained to the floor. And the strangest thing of all is his helmet is lying next to him on the deck. Rubricae can't remove their armor because it's sealed tight to keep the dust inside. And Ahriman sees this guy and sees his face. And he is not one of the brothers that had survived the first Rubric. And he talks to him very briefly, this guy. And he's like, what do you remember? And he's like, I remember one thing, and it's a really bright light. Ahriman figures that'll be the first Rubric, you know? He's like, no, you actually remember something else. I know for a fact you remember one more thing. He's like, yeah, my name is Helio Isidorus. So whatever happened with the Rubric, one way or another, one Marine has came back to life. Helio Isidorus is no longer just dust floating inside armor. He is a flesh and blood space Marine again. Just doesn't have any of his memories. But the name thing is because while they are Rubric Marines, if you use your mind to cast to them, like, and you call to them with their name to give them an order, they respond. That's how you control them. You need their name to do it. So they, even as automatons, they did know their names. So it makes sense that Helio remembers his. But yeah, one of them came back to life after all of this. So now there is a bit of hope. You know, Ahriman has somewhere to go now. He has to research into this. He has to figure out why this one guy came back. What happened to cause this and all this kind of stuff. So we have some place to go next, you know? But that is the end of this third section of the Ahriman thing. So we've got 2 more bits to go.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So, would you like to round us out for today?
Here can do. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast. It's been me, Mr. Ryan, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care and peace.
Bye.